The first step in competitive wargaming, you're going to take that wargaming system, you're going to take your tools, your talent, and play tournaments. You're going to play professionally. You're going to try and place on the top 3 tables, get that recognition, get that prize loot, and get those accolades. The first thing, and there are many tools, many tactica in our toolkit that I'm going to be exploring and pushing up to the competitive wargaming playlist here on the channel, but it begins with a significant shift. A shift from a hobby wargamer, a narrative wargamer, and there's nothing wrong with hobby. There's nothing wrong with narrative. I define hobby as you are trying to paint, you're trying to collect, you're trying to build, exploring the physical painting aspects of the hobby. I define a narrative wargamer as one that is focused on creating on the tabletop a story, immersing yourself in the history of the game. Tournament play is vastly different than the two, and you need to shift. You need to make that shift. Now, that's not to say that you can't be all three or you can't bounce back and forth. When I first started playing Warhammer 40,000, it was completely narrative. And for a good number of years, that's how I played it, and that's how I explored it. Until one day at the club, a bunch of players said, "Fritz, we're going down to Games Day in Baltimore, and guess what? You're going to represent with your Space Elves, with your Eldar." I had never really played in tournaments before. I never really pursued it. And in that moment, in the months leading to that, I made the shift to competitive Warhammer 40,000. Played that for a long time, had a lot of fun, bounced out, bounced back in. So within that framework, this is not all or nothing. You don't have to be one or the other. You can be all three. But the shift from hobby and narrative to competitive is completely different, and we need to align that. So the first thing, and this is true with any wargaming system, you need to become an advantage player. An advantage player is one that steps out from the awesome-looking miniatures, steps out from the awesome artwork and the awesome narrative, and looks at it from a purely semi-mathematical perspective. And in that framework, what that means is what courses of action are going to give you an advantage on the tabletop, not an auto win, right? The army's not going to set itself up and win for you, but ideally through good tactics and good leadership and understanding the tabletop, when you have these small advantages, they pile up. They make things easier. They also make it that if you have a bad round or two, right? If you're playing around and there's 5 turns and the first 2 turns are just an absolute disaster for whatever reason, you have enough advantages that you can come back. So you're always looking for these advantages that you can use. And an advantage player, this is not trickology where you're doing something to gain an advantage. These are hard attributes. These are hard rules within the system that are going to place that advantage. An example, and right now we're looking at frameworks, but I want to identify a few, and we're going to move into greater detail on them. Rerolls. This assumes a dice-based wargaming system, not a hybrid dice or card or a card-based system. A dice wargaming system, an advantage is rerolls. You roll the d6, you roll the d10 to make something happen. If it doesn't work, you miss or you don't hit or you don't beat that armor or you take a wound or you fail your cover save or it's a kill or it's a morale loss. Well, if I get something I don't like, can I get a reroll? Are there powers? Are there abilities? Are there upgrades? Are there units? Are there command points that are going to get me rerolls? Another aspect would be augmentation. Are there ways to turn hits into something greater? An example would be like from X-Wing miniatures, certain upgrades, certain combos let me take my hits and turn them into critical hits, or lets me take a critical hit and double it into 2 hits. Is there a way to augment? Effectively looking at the rules, looking at your system, looking to become an advantage player, building that list. That is the first place to start. You need to look for all the advantages. Another example would be we often see classifications tier 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4 for your armies, your armada, the list that you're playing. Tier 1 armies are armies that are the easiest to win with. the rules favor them. Perhaps they've got the newest units and the company's trying to sell them, so they make them overhyped, or just they have some great synergies. These are the most powerful. I mean, every unit, every army in Wargaming can't be equal, or else it wouldn't work. And also what you see with the Wargaming system that has a narrative, this faction is trying to do this, right? The rules try to have it play a certain way because that's what it does in this gaming universe. Well, likewise, this army does this because that's what it does in this gaming universe. The narrative supports the rules. Well, the rules are a simulation. Some rules are better than others. So what you're going to see is certain armies are the easiest to play tier 1. Those are the armies you really want to play. That's what you want to focus on. That's where you're going to gain the most advantage just by showing up with that army. Tier 2 is where we start to see you've got a lot of advantages, but maybe there's a rules update coming, or there's something's a little bit off, or a unit or two hasn't been upgraded in a while, or it can be countered. They're still very solid, and you could do very well, but it's going to be a little more tactica, a little bit more lift on your side. Tier 3 armies are not what you want to bring. These are the armies where they have some advantages, but they have a lot of disadvantages in the current meta, or how they stack up to tier 1 and tier 2 armies. They might look great. You can play the hobby, you can play the narrative, but absolutely avoid them in competitive play. There is no advantage because those advantages are canceled out by the disadvantages. And then tier 4 armies are unplayable in the rule set at the moment. Just don't even, and it's hard for me being a narrative player, a hobby player, it's hard to say this, but we're looking at this from a competitive point of view. Nothing that you desire will change a tier 4 army. I'm doing you a favor by saying do not even show up with a tier 4 army. But Fritz, I've been following your channel for like 10 years now, and I remember you had a couple of tier 4 armies that you would roll into tournament play. Yes, I was playing them for the lulz. I was playing them to kind of troll, building tier 4 armies that worked on tricknology, and were going to go up against some players that were bringing tier 1 armies that were a little bit overconfident that I could take advantage of it because I wanted to challenge myself. What that means is in a tournament play, I'd win maybe 2 games against tier 1 armies because they just didn't expect the angle I was coming at. But then I got crushed elsewhere. I went into it knowing that. When I played in doubles tournaments, or I'm playing as part of the club where we're all being ranked, meaning my actions reflect on my fellow battle brothers and teammates, what that means is I'm playing tier 1 army. That's just what I'm looking at. I wouldn't go any other way. Now, to approach it, these are the things that you need to know. You need to be looking for that advantage. And there is nothing wrong with pursuing it because it is another aspect of the hobby. To play competitively, to play from a tournament perspective, that's what we need to focus on. That's where you need to be. That is the framework for everything else. So building on this, I'm now going to be pushing up weekly. We've got the new schedule here on my channel. I'm focusing on a different aspect of wargaming every day to deliver that hobby, to sharpen my skills, and to get us back in the win. I'm going to be focusing on competitive tournament play 1 day a week, posting those up, and they will be collected in the competitive play tournament playlist here on the channel.